We've heard a lot in recent months about the deep state. Supporters of the president claim it's a shadowy group of Trump-hating officials in our national security bureaucracy who tried to stop him becoming president and are still plotting to get him out. In response, Democrats and never-Trump Republicans dismissed talk of a deep state as a crazy conspiracy theory. There once was a time when the left cared about civil liberties and the right cared about government overreach. But now, in their hatred of Donald Trump, the elites in both parties are turning a blind eye to a real problem that's been around for decades and which every American who cares about our democracy should be seriously concerned about: the rise of a permanent ruling class in our federal bureaucracy that arrogantly believes it's got the right to block the policies of the leaders that you elect. They block Republicans and they block Democrats. They're blocking President Trump, and unless we do something about it, they will block his successors too. Yes, there is a deep state, and it's the subject of tonight's Swamp Watch. The federal bureaucracy has become so unaccountable that it's impossible for citizens to know how big it is or what it does in their name and with their money. You can't get a straight answer out of the government itself, of course. The Administrative Conference of the United States lists 115 federal agencies, but according to the federal government's own website, USA.gov, there's over 400. There's a similar lack of transparency about how many government bureaucrats there are and what they all do. According to some estimates, there are nearly 2 million of them. Some say 3 million, but there's nowhere you can go to find out. Here's what we do know. These federal bureaucrats are unelected. Their pay is largely based on tenure, not performance. And special rules, along with powerful public sector unions, give them almost total job security, all of which adds up to zero accountability. Public sector unions don't just protect bureaucrats' jobs, though. They spend millions on lobbying and political donations to make sure elected politicians don't rock the boat. For example, the American Federation of Government Employees spent over $3 million on lobbying and gave over $7 million in campaign contributions just during the 2016 election cycle. This is taxpayer-funded lobbying of the government by the government. What a sick, swampy joke. Of course, with their jobs so well protected and no need to go to all the trouble of actually getting elected, this permanent bureaucratic class can spend more time creating the rules and regulations that affect the rest of us. In 2016, Congress enacted 214 laws. In that same time, federal agencies issued 3,853 rules and regulations. That's 18 regulations from the bureaucracy for every law passed by Congress. But there's an even more insidious way the deep state exercises its power: by blocking the policies of the people that you elect. President Obama was elected to end America's foreign wars. That's what he promised. But the permanent national security bureaucracy had a different idea. First, they refused to even give him options in line with his election promises. Then, in the middle of tense negotiations, 15 anonymous bureaucrats took matters into their own hands, leaking politically damaging comments to news outlets to apply pressure on President Obama. He gave in and sent 30,000 new troops to Afghanistan. Of course, deep state bureaucrats moved their obstruction into high gear when President Trump was elected. When the White House ordered a stop to advertising encouraging Americans to sign up for Obamacare, employees at the Health and Human Services Department rebelled and made the new administration revise its directive in less than 24 hours. An employee at the Justice Department, in charge of administering grants, threatened to slow down his work and file complaints with the Inspector General if given orders he didn't like. Quote, "You're going to see bureaucrats using time to their advantage," he said. "People here will resist and push back against orders they find unconscionable." Isn't there a, democratic norm about the civil service having a duty to faithfully implement the policies of the elected government? NPR interviewed a bureaucrat in the Department of Energy who admitted that she and her colleagues were altering project reports to remove mentions of climate change so the administration wouldn't end them. They said they were protecting their interests and agenda from scrutiny by the new administration. How fortunate we are to have such public-minded civil servants saving America from the consequences of silly old democracy. Here's another official, quote, "There are definitely some career civil servants that will not ever give in. The people that know how the system works have used these tactics within many administrations. When they think what they're doing is harmful to citizens or the country in the long run, I think they will stand up for what they believe in the bureaucratic ways that they can." Here's an idea. If that civil servant wants to stand up for what they believe in, how about running for office like everyone else? What unbelievable arrogance these people have. And there's one more way they wield their power, perhaps the most disturbing of all. the intelligence bureaucracies have become swollen with unaccountable power and resources since the 9/11 attacks, despite continuing scandals and failures. Before Edward Snowden exposed the National Security Agency's mass collection of Americans' phone records, then Director of National Intelligence James Clapper was asked by Congress if intelligence services gathered, quote, any type of data at all on millions of Americans. He answered, no, sir. That was a lie, and he admitted it later, describing his answer as, quote, clearly erroneous. Well, I suppose that's one way of putting it. This is the same James Clapper, the bureaucrat who secretly surveilled American citizens and lied about it to Congress, who's now running around denouncing Donald Trump as a threat to our democracy. What a charlatan. It turns out that secret surveillance is one of the deep state's favorite activities. The FBI opened over 80,000 assessments of people and groups between 2009 and 11, with agents allowed to open those assessments, quote, proactively or in response to investigative leads without any factual basis for suspecting a target of wrongdoing. Congressman Devin Nunes, of course, has brought all this into the spotlight with his memo accusing the FBI of abusing its power. But Nunes himself voted in January to renew the NSA's warrantless internet surveillance program for another 6 years. Whether it's pushing its own agenda, blocking the agenda of elected politicians, or using Big Brother surveillance to spy on the rest of us, there is no doubt that we have a permanent and dangerously unaccountable deep state in this country. Its members threaten every administration, Republican and Democrat alike. And with the election of Donald Trump, these arrogant bureaucrats have become bolder and bolder in asserting their power and showing total contempt for the American citizens they supposedly serve.